Imagine buying like a highly recommended book on fat loss. You brace yourself for the usual onslaught, right? Like complex spreadsheets, um, glycemic index math, intermittent fasting schedules, and, those crazy 50-step meal
Oh,
preps.
yeah, the ones that take up your entire Sunday.
Exactly. But you open it up, and instead you find literally a single sentence just printed like this relentless mantra on almost every single page. I mean, no elaborate recipes, no restrictive do not eat lists, just one sentence. So, welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. Our mission today is to analyze this highly focused, honestly uniquely structured source document titled Healthy Dinner Recipes for Fat Loss. And I just have to point out to you right at the top, this source material, it just completely strips away all the historical noise of modern diet culture.
It really does. It completely abandons the entire paradigm of micromanagement. I mean, we are so used to nutritional guidance acting like you need an advanced degree in biochemistry or something.
Right, we're constantly tracking macros and, measuring ketones all day.
Yeah, exactly, because doing all that math gives us this false sense of control. But this text, it forces a completely different cognitive approach on the reader.
Well, and here's that core thesis, like the exact formula that the source provides and just repeats constantly. It says, balanced dinners with vegetables, lean proteins, legumes, and whole grains support satiety and long-term wellness. And that's essentially the entire
That's
text.
the whole thing.
Yeah. So with all the conflicting, just overwhelming information out there about fat loss, why does the source strip the entire concept down to just four specific ingredients and like two distinct outcomes?
Well, so the source is making this highly calculated claim about human biology.
Yeah.
By just refusing to entertain any distractions or, granular calorie counting, it's basically arguing that you don't need the math if you understand the structural integrity of a single meal.
The structural integrity, I like that.
Right, because the text focuses entirely on biochemical leverage.
Hmm.
When you combine those four specific pillars we just mentioned,
Yeah.
you basically trigger this biological cascade that just renders calorie counting completely obsolete.
Okay, so, let's actually look at those exact building blocks, right? Because before we can understand what this meal actually physically does to the body, we have to look at the required components.
Hmm.
The text uses the word balanced, which, let's be honest, usually means absolutely nothing in the wellness space.
Oh, it's totally meaningless usually.
Yeah, people say, oh, eat a balanced diet, and that could mean, I don't know, a slice of greasy pizza next to a diet soda, right?
I mean, the word balance has basically been weaponized by food marketing for decades to justify junk food. But this text, it actually reclaims the word and defines it really rigidly.
How so?
Well, it breaks down the balanced plate into four explicit, completely non-negotiable components. So that's vegetables, lean proteins, legumes, and whole grains. And it groups them together with a very deliberate...
Oh, like it's not an or?
Exactly. It's not vegetables or lean proteins. This isn't some mix and match buffet where you just pick your favorites.
It makes me think of a four-legged stool. Like, if you're
Yeah.
building a stool for you to sit on, you need all four legs for it to hold any real weight.
That's a great way to visualize it.
Right. So if you have the vegetables, the lean proteins, and the whole grains, but you, say, pull out the legumes, the stool wobbles. And if you take away the whole grains too, the stool just collapses entirely under the pressure of your metabolism. The whole structural integrity of the meal actually relies on all four pillars being present on the plate simultaneously.
Yeah, the synergy is where the magic really happens, biologically speaking. I mean, we so often look at food in total isolation,
Like, oh, chicken breast equals protein.
right? We look at a chicken breast and just say protein, or we look at spinach and say vitamins. But human digestion, it just doesn't work in isolation like that.
It's more complex.
Way more. When you combine the specific types of soluble and insoluble fibers that are found in the vegetables and legumes, and you mix that with the complete amino acid profiles of the lean proteins, plus the complex, slow-digesting starches of the whole grains, you create this very specific food matrix in the gut.
Okay, I have to hit pause right here and just push back on this a little bit, because if you are listening to this right now and your primary goal is fat loss, two of those four legs are going to raise an immediate, just massive red flag for you.
You're talking about the carbs.
Obviously. Legumes and whole grains are incredibly carb dense, and modern diet culture has totally trained us to view carbohydrates as like the ultimate enemy of fat loss.
Oh, absolutely.
So if you tell someone to go load up their dinner plate with beans and brown rice, they are going to panic about...
So when people panic about carbs, they're almost always thinking about cellular carbs. That's your flour, your sugar, your heavily processed grains. Basically, anything where the actual cellular structure of the plant has been completely pulverized into dust.
Like white bread or pasta.
Exactly. And when you eat those, your digestive enzymes just have immediate access to that starch. It converts into glucose instantly. So you get this massive insulin spike, and your body is immediately signaled to store fat.
Right, because there's no physical barrier there slowing down the absorption. It just, floods your system.
Totally floods it. But the text, it specifically mandates whole grains and legumes. And these are cellular carbohydrates. The starch is still locked inside the intact, really fibrous cell walls of the plant itself.
Oh, so your body actually has to work for it.
Exactly. When you combine that heavy plant fiber with the lean protein, it actually creates a physical net in your stomach and your small intestine. Your digestive enzymes have to work incredibly hard, literally over a period of several hours, just to untangle that net and actually access the calories inside.
Wow. So it's essentially like a biological time-release capsule. Instead of a rapid flood of glucose that triggers all that fat storage, your body just gets this slow, steady, metered drip of energy.
And because that drip is so incredibly slow, your insulin levels barely rise at all. You just never get that spike.
Which means you never get the subsequent crash either.
Right. The fat storage pathways just remain quiet. And this is exactly why the text focuses on adding nutrient-dense foods to the plate, rather than, restricting or taking things away.
Well, which is just such a massive contradiction to the way we usually tackle this stuff. I mean, if the goal is fat loss, the immediate instinct is always subtraction, right? Eat half your plate, skip dinner entirely, cut out entire food groups. We basically view fat loss as this miserable exercise in deprivation and just white-knuckling through hunger.
Yeah, and the text just completely flips that paradigm upside down. It actually achieves the goal of fat loss through sheer abundance.
Abundance. I love that.
It implies that if you just focus on the correct additions, literally putting enough of those 4 specific pillars onto the plate, the fat loss mechanism sort of takes care of itself because you are fundamentally altering your body's hormonal response to the meal.
Okay, so if we've piled this plate high with these 4 really dense food groups, we need to explore what the text says this abundant meal actually does, because it guarantees 2 distinct outcomes. And the immediate one, like the one that happens the very second you push your chair back from the dinner table, is satiety.
Yes, satiety. And satiety is a highly specific clinical term, and it's really critical that we distinguish it from just being full.
Right, because they aren't the same thing.
Not at all. Being full is purely mechanical. It just means you physically scratch your stomach lining by putting a large volume of matter into it. I mean, you can get full by drinking a gallon of water or eating a giant mixing bowl full of iceberg lettuce.
But an hour later, you are going to be ravenously hungry again.
Exactly, because you haven't actually triggered true biochemical satiety.
So satiety is more like that profound psychological and physical feeling where you just feel done. Like you don't want a snack. You aren't browsing the pantry looking for chips. The desire to consume is just totally switched off.
That switch is controlled by hormones, specifically hormones like leptin and GLP-1. And the source text draws a direct causal line from those 4 food pillars to the activation of those very specific satiety hormones.
Okay, break that down for us because this is fascinating. How does this specific 4-legged stool of a meal actually pull the lever on those hormones?
It actually happens way down in the lower part of your digestive tract, in the gut microbiome. So when the soluble fiber from the legumes and the vegetables finally reaches your large intestine, the bacteria down there begin to ferment it.
Okay.
And this fermentation process actually produces these compounds called short-chain fatty acids, primarily one called butyrate.
Wait, and butyrate is the chemical messenger?
It is an incredibly powerful messenger. When those short-chain fatty acids interact with the cells lining your gut, they trigger an immediate release of GLP-1.
Wait, GLP-1, like the exact same hormone that all those modern super expensive weight loss medications target?
Yes, the exact same one. But this text is outlining how to stimulate it completely naturally, just through food. That GLP-1 travels straight to your brain and literally hits the neurological kill switch for hunger.
Oh, wow. So the meal itself is literally manufacturing the appetite suppressant inside you. That just changes the entire dynamic of your evening. Because if you have a standard unbalanced diet, let's say a dinner that's just a massive plate of refined pasta, or on the flip side, a tiny sad side salad with some fat-free dressing, you aren't producing any of those short-chain fatty acids.
Not at all.
So that unbalanced meal is kind of like throwing flash paper into a fireplace. You get this really quick burst of energy, a bright, hot flame, and then 20 minutes later, the fire is completely out. You're freezing, your hunger hormones are just screaming at you, and you are frantically looking around the kitchen for more fuel.
Yeah, your ghrelin levels, which is the hormone that makes you feel hungry, they just skyrocket because the mechanical stretch in your stomach from the food is gone, and the actual biochemical satiety is just never triggered to begin with.
But this specific combination in our text, it acts as a dense, tightly wound hardwood log. You put the vegetables, the protein, the legumes, and the whole grains on the fire all together, and it just burns steadily, quietly for the rest of the evening.
It keeps you warm.
Exactly. You don't need to keep feeding the fire because the time-release capsule of that fiber matrix is still in there working.
And that right there is the text's really radical underlying thesis for fat loss. You don't lose fat by starving yourself. You lose fat because the slow-burning log of those four pillars naturally, biologically prevents you from overeating later in the evening.
The satiety is doing all the heavy lifting for you.
Completely. It shuts down that behavioral loop of late-night snacking, which, let's be honest, is where most people completely derail their fat loss goals.
It's so true. And here is where the timeline of the source document gets really, really fascinating to me. Because satiety is the immediate reward, right? It's what happens tonight. But the source immediately bridges that short-term physical feeling to a vastly longer timeline. It explicitly ties this exact same meal structure to long-term wellness.
Yeah, it's a very deliberate juxtaposition by the author. Just look at the title of the document again. Healthy Dinner Recipes for Fat Loss. Now, fat loss is almost universally viewed by people as a short-term, temporary project.
Right, it's a 30-day challenge. It's a grueling sprint to fit into a wedding outfit or prep for a beach vacation. It has a start date, and it definitely has an end date.
And usually the methods people use for that chaotic sprint are completely unsustainable. I mean, you can't drink cabbage soup for the rest of your life.
I mean, you could, but you'd be miserable.
Right, exactly. But the core sentence of this text pairs that short-term project directly with long-term wellness, which is a lifelong permanent state. It's decades. It's the preservation of your metabolic health, your cardiovascular system, and your cognitive function for literally the rest of your life.
So how does a single Tuesday night dinner bridge that massive gap? Like, are they saying fat loss and longevity are actually the exact same biological process?
The text absolutely implies that the mechanisms are deeply, deeply intertwined. The exact same balanced dinner that is required to reach the short-term goal of fat loss by triggering that slow-burning satiety and blunting the insulin spike we talked about is actually the exact same biochemical environment that prevents chronic metabolic diseases over the long haul.
So you can't really decouple them.
The text refuses to separate them. Those four pillars provide the micronutrients, the fiber, and the cellular stability that dictate both how much fat you store today and how healthy your cells are 20 years from now.
You know, this actually brings me back to the bizarre format of the source document itself. We noted at the beginning how totally strange it is to open a book and just see the exact same sentence repeated over and over, line after line. Balanced dinners with vegetables, lean proteins, legumes, and whole grains support satiety and long-term wellness.
It is unusual for sure.
But if you're listening right now, just think about how much mental energy you spend every single day deciding what to eat, debating with yourself, negotiating over calories. Does the sheer volume of repetition in the text actually mirror the psychological requirement for long-term wellness?
I think it does. The format of the document is basically a structural metaphor for consistency. If you read the sentence just once, you treat it like a quick tip, a fun life hack you try on a Monday and then completely forget about by Thursday.
Right.
But by forcing you to confront the exact same mantra relentlessly on every page, it basically strips away the illusion that wellness requires constant novelty.
We suffer from such severe diet fatigue because we think we constantly need to innovate our dinner plates. Like, we get bored. We want a new recipe, a new exotic superfood, some new philosophy to make the process feel exciting again.
And that desire for novelty is exactly what fractures our consistency. The repetition in the text is practically screaming at the reader that long-term wellness isn't found in a new, exciting diet every single month. It is found in the deeply unsexy, highly repetitive act of just returning to the exact same foundational principles.
It's about building that four-legged stool and actually sitting on it every single day.
Every single day.
Because it just removes the cognitive load. It's almost meditative, honestly. You don't have to wake up every day and invent a totally new nutritional identity. When dinner time rolls around and you are just exhausted from work, you don't have to calculate macros or consult a spreadsheet. You just return to the biological mantra. Do I have a vegetable? Do I have a lean protein? Do I have a legume? Do I have a whole grain?
And doing that automates the process of health. When you automate the construction of the plate like that, your body actually adapts to that consistency. Your gut microbiome actually physically shifts its composition to become more efficient at breaking down those specific fibers.
Wow, really, it adapts to the repetition.
Yes, your metabolic flexibility improves. By embracing the repetition, you allow the physiological mechanisms of satiety and wellness to actually take root deep down, rather than constantly disrupting your body with whatever the latest fad diet is.
So if you are listening to this right now and you're planning your dinner for tonight, I want you to look at your plate and just ask yourself, are all four legs of the stool there? Because building a meal for fat loss shouldn't actually require a calculator.
Definitely not.
It doesn't require punishing deprivation or going to bed miserable and hungry. It requires a commitment to a very specific type of biological synergy, ensuring that the vegetables, the lean proteins, the legumes, and the whole grains are all locked together to create that time-release capsule.
And that is the immense value of engaging with a stripped-down text like this one. It just cuts entirely through the noise, the marketing budgets, and the information overload. If you can trust the science of satiety and just focus on these core structural truths, the fat loss actually becomes a natural, effortless byproduct of a body that is just consistently well-nourished.
Which leaves us with a final concept to mull over before we wrap up. We started this deep dive talking about how incredibly complicated we make wellness, how we treat diets like these intense short-term engineering projects designed to fix a temporary problem. But if the exact same meal structure that leads to fat loss is also what sustains long-term wellness, perhaps we shouldn't view dieting and living well as two separate phases of life. Maybe they aren't different seasons. Maybe the ultimate secret to health is realizing that the fix and the maintenance are the exact same daily practice happening right there on your dinner plate, one slow-burning log at a time.